Welcome to Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. In the next half hour, you'll obtain insights and tools to transform your life using the biblical principles found in the 12-step program. We believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience because we all have struggles in life. Struggles with addictions, food, depression, anxiety, and relationships, to name a few. You'll be encouraged to see how others have found a new way of life with hope for the future through life recovery. Your host is Steve Arterburn, founder of New Life Ministries and Women of Faith, author of over 100 books, and teaching pastor at Northview Church in Carmel, Indiana, one of the 20 largest churches in America. Steve is the co-editor of the Life Recovery Bible, the #1 selling recovery Bible. With over 3 million copies sold, this is the Bible given to inmates by Prison Fellowship and the Pew Bible for the Salvation Army. Now here's Steve.
Hi there, Steve Arterburn here. Welcome to Life Recovery Today. We're going to talk about relationships today, and Chris Williams is going to provide us with a couple of great teaching sessions on addiction and relationship. Now, if you're overlooking relationships in recovery, boy, are you ever overlooking a big part of recovery. Because if we recover, we have to know what the impact of our behavior has been on other people, and then we need to go make it right. You know, I hear people say, I was delivered from my addiction. Do I believe that that's true? Absolutely. I've seen it happen. I've seen a guy look down into his sink and something he saw caused him to just literally never want to touch alcohol again. But when we're delivered, are the people around us delivered into forgiveness, into instant acceptance of what we're going through? No. We need to work a program. If we have been delivered, it just means we can work harder on the character we need to build without having to deal with the overriding draw into the addictive chemical or behavior. When you work recovery, you're going to work on some wounds. And those wounds, well, they might have been why you started this addictive process. But over time, you know, you've heard the expression that, like if it was an alcoholic, the person takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the person. And so at some point, we're not doing stuff out of old wounds, we're doing it because the cunning and baffling addiction has taken away our power of control or to cope. Now, many of us have defective coping skills. And our strategy of getting through things has been really defective. And one of the things that we do is, I don't want to shock you here, we lie. And so when we lie, the authentic relationship goes away. So what is the opposite of lying? It's redemptive connection. When we get with somebody and we're open and authentic and truthful, then we can have a connection. If I lie, if I'm more interested in covering up, being the magician that makes you believe things that aren't here are, or things that are here really aren't. If I'm just a magician, well, I might do some tricks in front of you, but it's not going to be very fulfilling. I don't want any of us to get stuck in that stage. Well, today on this program, Chris Williams, one of the co-hosts on New Life Live, he's going to share 3 keys to becoming relationally healthy. And he's going to help us to understand how, shame impacts us and how it affects every single part of a relationship. You know, if you have shame, there are only 3 reasons you have it. Someone has put it on you and done something shameful to you, and you're carrying that shame. Or you haven't accepted forgiveness for the shameful things you did. And then the third, you're involved in some things that are shameful. But so many times we're not involved in shameful things, but we're still walking around with the residual shame. So Chris is going to help us understand that, and he's going to help us understand the difference between really coping and caring. Here's Chris Williams. I think you're going to like what he has to say.
Hi, Chris Williams here, co-host of New Life Live, and I'm here to talk today about 3 keys to becoming relationally healthy. We all know that there is not an area of our life that isn't negatively impacted by unhealthy relationships, but conversely, there isn't an area of our life that isn't positively impacted by positive or healthy relationship. But healthy relationship for many of us still remains somewhat of a mystery. So today I want to give 3 key and tangible points that lead us to greater relational health, satisfaction, and ultimately fulfillment. And the first one is just this: self-awareness. We all deal with tremendous blind spots within ourselves, and we all kind of have this great capacity for self-deception. And with that, we become unaware of how we impact other people, unaware of even how we impact ourselves or how we're impacted. And so beginning to be in healthy relationship really does start with, do I have a healthy awareness of myself? What are the things that I do well? What are the things that I do poorly? How do I impact other people? And sometimes self-awareness is just brought on by an openness to other people's feedback and other people's feedback about how we affect them or impact them. But again, self-awareness also just takes some consideration and some emotional awareness around that as well. How am I feeling? What am I thinking? And at the end of the day, it's being able to pay attention to ourselves. And anything that we can pay attention to or notice or then recognize, we can transform or change. But the things that we can't see or can't be aware of have no ability to change or even be highlighted or built upon. So our positive areas can't be grown and our negative areas can't be worked on. So again, self-awareness is a huge deal here that we must be able to increase our ability to connect with. The second thing goes along the lines of self-awareness, and it's humility. They almost go together really well, because humility isn't a low view of myself or I just purely think others are better than me. Humility is actually a keen awareness and acceptance of both my strengths and my weaknesses. So humility allows me to say, hey, I do these things really, really well. That I have been set up or hardwired to have strengths in these areas, that God has gifted me here. As well as, man, I have some real growth areas here. I have some weaknesses, or I'm not as strong here in this other area. And so humility comes with a lot of acceptance. I accept those things. I may not like it. I don't like my weaknesses. I don't like my sin propensities or my sin bents. But also I am very grateful of my strengths. And I do like those. And I'm learning to accept those and really allow other people to enjoy my strengths as well. And so as we're able to have that humility, again, we're able to lean on the things that we're good at, and we're able to, again, work on the things that we're not so good at and need some growth areas. The other aspect is, or the final aspect of that is just what I mentioned, growth. And so life will put us in many different situations that we can't predict right now. I don't know what's going to happen to me 5, 10 years from now, or even what I'm going to be like. But I do know that certain events and circumstances and relationships in life are going to bring different things out in me or present different challenges. If I'm committed to a lifelong pursuit of personal growth, it makes me a safer person. Again, a safer person for myself, for other people around me, and also allows that constant pursuit of God, that I call it a beginner's mindset, that I'm never fully arrived or never fully formed. And that's not a threat. That's actually just a reality that helps me keep in a growth mindset, that each day or each season of life there is something to work on and something for God to be able to transform in my life so I can be a little bit healthier. And so when you get 2 people working together that are self-aware, that are humble, and that are committed to growth, you really do have the ingredients and the recipe for a very healthy relationship to continue to be to grow out of there and be born out of that place. So again, if you're struggling with relationship in your life and it is confusing to you, start in these 3 areas and always start with yourself. How do I become more self-aware? How do I become more connected to humility and truly humble? And then how do I continue on in my growth trajectory, in my growth journey? And here's what a shame filter is. Well, so let's start with shame. Shame really is, at the heart of it, a core negative belief about myself. But it's a belief that is more than just a, hey, I've done something wrong. We adopt the belief as an identity of who I am. So shame beliefs, the most common one, at least that I've encountered on planet Earth, is not good enough or not enough. Not good enough is the primary shame message that we hold against ourselves. Oftentimes we hold against other people, but it's sort of like the air we breathe and sometimes the water we drink. Others can sound like unlovable, unworthy. It could be like, I don't have what it takes. But again, it's something that we're holding against ourselves, a real self-contempt belief and message. Now, what this does is it really damages relationships, not just with the relationship with the self. It really damages our relationship with other people. And here's why. Because we develop what I call a shame filter. It means every message that comes through gets filtered through that self-belief. So for instance, if I believe that I'm not good enough, like listen, I'm sitting here talking to an audience through Club New Life as a supposed professional. And if I think that I'm not good enough, that is going to impact the way that I construct a message, the way that I hear a message. Or if you leave a comment in the feedback and say, this was unhelpful, and if you say this is unhelpful, I don't hear that this was unhelpful. What I hear is that I'm not good enough. And so now you're going to get a lot of defense from me, or I'm going to go into a dark hole or a dark place. Again, when we hold these shame messages like unlovable, we can even hear a compliment as a criticism. We can't hear feedback from other people because feedback goes through that filter and all feedback becomes painful. And again, when that pain hits, we will most likely become defensive. And that defense could be shaming people back, getting mad, argumentative. Sometimes the defenses could be shutdown and isolation and withdrawal. But whatever the case may be, it's really important that we pay attention to our core shame filters and we go to work on them. And we go to work on then adopting different beliefs about ourselves and having different experiences around it. And also, if we're hearing a criticism from somebody else, that may not be a criticism. It may just be a feedback. It may even be a compliment. We want to be able to slow it down and be able to clarify with them what they're trying to tell us and let us know. And by the way, if it's a critique, it may be really helpful. How I know that our shame filters are not active is that we can hear feedback from other people and we can filter around like, hey, that's legitimate. I need to work on this area, or this is how a person feels, and that's okay. Or it could be like, hey, that sounds like it comes from a place of a person's anger or their own shame filter, and I can sort of leave that aside and I can respect it, but I can also not adopt it as my own or take that in. But I can't make those wise decisions about what to come in and what to let go if my shame filter is active. Again, this shame absorbs all messaging in the world through that lens and through the lens of the message of not good enough, unlovable, unworthy, or whatever that shame message is. So let's get rid of the lens and the filter, and let's get a different filter. A cleaner filter, a filter that is able to receive information and receive feedback, hear it well, and also give it well. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to live with ourselves much easier. And I find that the primary filter that is the antidote to the shame filters is the filter that I'm loved. If I know that I'm loved and I cultivate that belief that I'm loved, then I'm okay to hear feedback from other people because I have a secure base to rely on, to breathe deep on, and a foundation that is strong enough to be able to hold whatever the feedback may be, and also be able to receive positive feedback well. So if you're struggling with shame filters, no, it's not just hurting you, it's hurting the relationships around you. So let's go to work on that. Let's see how it got there, and let's see how to get rid of it and replace it with a healthier filter. Thank you for being with me today.
Are you going through your struggles alone? Do you want someone to talk to help you through your pain? Do you feel like a failure when you relapse again, telling yourself, next time will be different? Don't walk this path alone anymore. Join a life recovery group today and be a person that your friends and family can be proud of. God created us to be in community, and we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country, and if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. Life Recovery brings recovery to you, right where you are. You'll take a journey with others to find healing and freedom. Whether you're looking to join a group or start one, New Life Ministries is here for you. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or visit liferecoverytoday.net.
Welcome back. When I was in graduate school, I was supposed to do a report on stress. Eustress, the good kind of stress. And I studied a gentleman named Sans Helye, and it was quite an interesting study. The title of my paper was "Only the Best Violins Make It to the Orchestra Pit." Well, what I was talking about was stress is the thing that allows us to tune a violin to perfection. It's that stretching and stress on the string that leads to a beautiful music. So stress can be a really good thing, and it can also be something that produces a lot of sour notes in a relationship. Well, Chris is going to help us understand how do we cope and how do we care, because there's a very, very big difference in coping with stress and then caring and having compassion for another person. So here again, with our final segment, Chris Williams.
Hi, Chris Williams here today, co-host of New Life Live, and I'm here today to talk about stress and handling your stress. But we first need to start off with, well, what is stress? And let me just say this, stress is something that keeps us alive. We have deep in our brain a thing called the stress response system. And anytime we experience distress, it sends off an alarm, which we call stress, that tells us that something is off, that we need to do something about that thing. So oftentimes that thing is tired. So when you're tired and you're feeling grumpy and you're feeling irritable, it tells you that you need to sleep. And so once you get a good night rest, then you're no longer in distress. Or if you get a good nap, no longer in distress. So eating is similar to that. If I haven't eaten for a long time and I'm really hungry, again, we have this thing called hangry. And hangry is a feedback mechanism that tells me that I'm in distress. And stress, again, is that dashboard that lights up that says that something is off. It's really important. Again, it's something that keeps us alive. So the idea is not to eliminate stress. The idea is to work through the stress, to find out what the stress is pointing towards, usually an unmet need or a problem that needs to be addressed or fixed. But here's where handling stress and dealing with stress gets really complicated and really messy. Is that oftentimes we're dealing with stress, and oftentimes high levels of stress, that we don't have a good identification for. We don't know what it is and what it's about. And oftentimes what we'll do is we will go into coping mechanisms. And so coping mechanisms allow us to manage stress in a way that typically escapes the discomfort of it or numbs the discomfort of it. And so it could be binge watching something on Netflix or TV or whatever it may be. That's a way to escape the stress or the distress. Obviously can get into areas like drinking or smoking or any of the other types of medicators that we have. Overworking oftentimes is a way to deal with and manage our distress. But coping doesn't ever deal with the actual problem. It doesn't fix anything. Or at least what is driving the distress. And that's why it becomes progressive. It's like if I eat away my stress, the more stress I feel, the more I eat. But if the stress is never dealt with in a way that's pointing to the actual problem, it's just going to create larger and larger amounts of food. And usually for me, that looks like carbs and sugar to be able to deal with the stress. But again, it's coping with the stress. And so there's a different avenue that we can take here. And instead of coping, we can get into caring. Caring and coping are two very different things. Caring for our stress is really addressing the actual problem. It's paying attention to us. It's paying attention to ourselves. It's asking the question, what is driving my stress here? What is driving my distress here? That is causing all of this discomfort in me, again, that I want to cope or I want to medicate, but it really needs to be dealt with in its core problem. And so oftentimes it could be that we're in difficult relationship and we're afraid to have a critical and important conversation. We're afraid of conflict. And so instead of dealing with the conflict, we will cope with the distress. But the conflict is never resolved. And therefore, we haven't taken care of the problem. Or it could be that we have sleep issues. And again, we may compensate in other areas. And underneath the sleep issues may be anxiety. But if we never deal with that underlying anxiety, or if we never deal with that underlying depression, or if we don't deal with the pain from my childhood, or the lack of connection I have with other people, all of those things point to things that need to be taken care of rather than coped with. And so as we're handling and dealing our stress, I think it's really important to ask the deeper questions. What is really driving this? And if I don't know, I may need to go get help to help others and professionals like a therapist help me understand what's driving the distress in my life, that I can care for it well as opposed to just cope. And then we get to the very daily life of self-care that really helps manage our stress very well. Things like proper diet and exercise, sleep and relational connection, time with God. This can all feel like things that we add on to our life that can create more stress. But if we begin in very simple, small ways to care for ourselves and care for our bodies, care for our minds and care for our souls, the more we care for ourselves, the less we will need to cope in negative ways. And the more we'll be able to be healthy people who show up in the world. So today, if you're dealing with a lot of stress, I want you to just simply ask the question, am I coping with this stress, or am I caring for the problem that is driving it? Once you get into care, you'll start eventually finding relief from what is distressing you, and you'll be in a growth process and you'll be healthier from it. Thank you for being with me today. Stress is something we all deal with. Let's care for our stress instead of just purely coping with our stress. Thank you.
Welcome back. Well, all of us struggle with stress, and hopefully we get to a place where stress is not such an impactful force in our lives, because not only do we know how to cope with stress, but we know how to thrive in it. Well, it all creates some really tough things in relationships, and we need to work on those relationships. We need to make some things right in relationships. Now, if I were to stab you with a fountain pen, because I write with fountain pens, if I were to stab you with a fountain pen, and then you reacted to me with venomous hatred, bitterness, and anger, would it be a good thing for me to criticize your reaction to being stabbed with a fountain pen by me? No. You see, a lot of times we do things to other people. We hurt them. Not just hurt them, we devastate them. And then when they react, we criticize their reaction. Well, you don't love me like I need to be loved. All sorts of weird things. Well, first of all, we need to quit sticking people with fountain pens or whatever we point their way. And then secondly, when they react to something hurtful that we've done, we need to try to understand that hurt. We need to try to have compassion on the hurt that we have caused. And if we don't, how can we ever have a healthy relationship? Now, a lot of people say, well, what is a healthy relationship? I think it's this. I think it's two people wanting something better because they're together. Even at work. You know, I've had people work with me. They didn't want something better. They wanted a paycheck or they wanted time off, but they weren't working with me to create something better for good. Well, in love and romance and dating and all of that, you decide, if I was with this person and we did some things, and we got married and created some kids, we could do something better for the world than if we go our separate ways. That is the true motivation for relationship. Now, once we decide that we can do better things, I think old Satan steps in and shows us just how stupid that was, tried to make us believe you were wrong, and get us off track. And so the healthy relationship knows how to go from being off track to getting right back on track, repairing whatever damage has been done due to insensitivity or whatever I've done. So I want to challenge you, if you've got a relationship where there's hurt, are you reacting to their reaction from the hurt you caused? Make it right with those people. We want every person to experience a godly and healthy relationship. Now, what is the key indicator of a godly, healthy relationship? Well, Jesus was the Prince of Peace. And I believe if you have a healthy relationship, there's peace there rather than conflict. There's peace rather than you wanting to give somebody a piece of your mind. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's a nurturing thing. Now, if you're not experiencing that, and you want some help and direction, you call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. People woke up this morning wanting to help somebody transform, and they'll do it if you'll call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. And I will see you next time on Life Recovery Today.
Thanks for joining us for Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. We hope this program has helped you integrate God's truth and wisdom into your recovery journey. This program is brought to you by New Life Ministries, and it's your support that keeps this program on the air. When you contact us for any reason, be sure to let us know that you watch on NRB. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to liferecoverytoday.net. Please join us again next week for more Life Recovery Today.